Awesome. Okay, welcome everyone to another Thrive After Stroke support group. My name is Ella, and Julie Tomeno will be with us shortly. Thank you so much for coming. Today we have with us my very good friend and not sure how else to say this, but truly badass woman, Julie Gamez. I love her. Julie, you're such an inspiration in pretty much every aspect of my life, not even talking about stroke recovery. So I'm really, really excited for
So,
Julie to share a bit of her story,
yes,
and for you guys to engage with her, ask questions, and learn more about recovery and how to thrive in life after stroke.
awesome.
So Julie, the floor is yours. You can take it away.
Yes, hi guys. So my name is Julie. I currently am 39 and I had my stroke 8 years ago. So I was 32 when I had my stroke, and I was 7 days post-stroke. I'm sorry, 7 days postpartum. I had just given birth to my daughter, and she's 7 days old at the time, and I'm rocking her to sleep. It was during the day, kind of mid-afternoon, and I hear a pop in the back of my head. Now, backstory is previously I didn't know anything about stroke. Had you asked me pre-stroke what stroke meant, I would have associated that word with heart. So I had no idea that stroke was associated with the word brain whatsoever. So when I heard the pop, or felt and heard the pop in the back of my head as I'm holding my daughter, 7 days old, I immediately went for the back of my head and just felt this instant headache. And at that point, I just remember like grabbing my head and was like, wow, oh, my head hurts really bad. What's going on? It was instant. And so I went to my husband and I told him, I'm like, I have a really bad headache. I don't know why, but it just hurts really, really bad. Didn't feel like the normal headache. It was just really, really intense and whatnot. And so he said, well, again, we just had the baby. I just had the baby. So we figured maybe I'm dehydrated. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe because I hadn't slept, it could be the cause of the headache. So at that point, I started to take the necessary steps. I ate food, I had water, I drank Tylenol, nothing was helping and whatnot. And, a lot of times as women, I'll speak for women, we tend to, I guess what's the word? We tend to downplay pain. And so I thought I could just tolerate it as long as I could. So I tolerated the headache for about, I think the headache started about 2. It progressed till about 5 p.m. And at that point, I just remember thinking, my kids have to get picked up from school. At the time, I had 3 older girls plus the baby. So they also had to be picked up from school. Nevertheless, picked them up from school and came home. And I just knew, okay, let me just lay down. Let me just hand the baby off to my husband, lay down, whatnot. And at that point, I remember throwing up. I showed no signs at this point. I'm still downplaying this pain. I'm still going about my day. And then by this point, 5 hours had passed till now I'm at this point feeling emotional. And I'll explain later why that was one of the signs. But nevertheless, I started to feel emotional. And I just remember leaning over to my husband, asking him for forgiveness. Granted, in your right mind, why would I be asking my husband for forgiveness, right? When everything's going great. So at that point, I'm like, forgive me. I don't feel the same. I feel different. Started crying. And at that point, nobody could take me to the hospital. So I called a dear friend of mine. She came, she picked me up and took me to a non-trauma hospital, which I figured out later, that it was a non-trauma, meaning there were the limitations to giving me any medical attention was limited, right? So I drive over to the hospital and I get there, and the first thing she says is, Julie, I've noticed that throughout your whole entire pregnancy, you've come in with headaches. Has your OB never ordered an MRI for you? And I said, no, but I'm just in a lot of pain. By this time, it's already 10 o'clock at night. The headache started around 2. And I had just allowed that all that time to go on with all this pain, no signs, nothing. So she takes my blood pressure and she's like, it's really, really high. Do you have signs of high blood pressure? I've always been overweight, but never had signs of high blood pressure, eclampsia, nothing. Any kind of preeclampsia, nothing to alert anything that, would cause this stroke at this point. So then they take me to the back And at this point, I'm kind of a little combative. I'm getting irritated because I have no pain meds. I'm in a lot of pain. I'm still not showing any signs. And they take me to the back and they're like, Julie, we need you to lay down because we need to get a CAT scan of your head. And I remember laying back down and instantly coming right back up. I'm like, there's no way. There is no freaking way I can lay back down. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds. And with the 5 seconds, I was so crazy. They probably thought I was crazy. I was counting to five. I was like, five, four, three, two, one. I got up, and from what I could give them at that point is when they determined that I was having a hemorrhagic stroke, which not sure if everybody in this group is aware of the types of strokes you can have. Well, I had a hemorrhagic, which is a brain bleed, which is the most deadliest, less common stroke to have that was happening to me. So at that point, I was having a hemorrhagic. Nobody really told me much at this point because I'm kind of a little angry, right? I need pain meds. I need pain meds. And at that point, I remember them asking for a urine sample and me squatting down and couldn't get back up on the left side. And at that point, I was like, wait, why can't I get up? What's going on? I again not knowing everything that was going on. The paramedics came, they picked me up, they put me on the bed, and they transferred me over to a university hospital. At that point, I just remember the last thing that I remember. It's funny, I remember everything up until the ride over to the hospital. I got to the hospital and I just remember banging on the door asking the paramedic if we were going to get to the hospital soon. And he said, yes, ma'am, just stay patient, just stay with us. And I just remember knocking on it. At that point, I was done. Then I get to the hospital. I don't remember much, but playing it all back now and getting stories from my family as to what took place afterwards was when I got to the hospital, my sister and my mom and my aunt were the first ones to arrive. And at that point, the doctor had stopped my sister and was like, you cannot go back there. My sister asked why. They're like, she's combative. You wouldn't even recognize her. We're treating her with this certain medication. And my sister, I just remember my sister pulling out the phone and was like, name the medication. She Googled it and it was a psychotic med. They were treating me with psychotic meds because they thought I was crazy. Granted, right? I was in a lot of pain. And at this point, they had somewhat of a reason to think that. So my sister's like, no, she's not psycho. If you let me talk to her, she'll recognize my voice. She'll be fine. They allowed her to go back. And from what she says, I was unrecognizable. I was at that point, I think aphasia started to kick in a little bit. I was just kind of mouthing out nonsense at that point, and she dropped her coffee. She was in shock. Then from that point, I remember them rushing me to ICU. And that's where they performed the first surgery to remove the bone flap, which is my skull, to relieve the brain from the swelling that was going on and taking place. So they removed that. That was the first surgery. They removed it. And they went in through my growing and they tried to jumpstart the brain, not once, but twice, because the arteries were contracting so much so that there was no blood flow going through the brain. So the second time that they jumpstarted the brain, it worked. And at that point, I'm somewhat in stable condition. And then everything was fine until the next day. I was septic and they could not find the infection in my body, but there was poison. I was septic, which I'm not sure if everybody understands or knows what septic means, but it means it's pretty much poison in your blood. So with the poison in my blood, there's an infection and they could not find where the infection was at. Even with antibiotics, I was running a fever. So at this point, I was submerged in ice with the fan blowing to my skin to kind of break the fever in somewhat. That was not working. And at that point, everybody was the doctors were losing hope a little bit and were saying, let's prepare for the worst. Just come say your goodbyes because we cannot find the infection. It's in her body. There's poison in her blood. She's not going to live for long. And I remember being in a coma for 10 days, right? And I'll talk later if anybody wants questions, because I do have some questions with everybody in regards if they've ever experienced being in a coma. But nevertheless, so I was in a coma for 10 days. And I'll never forget this story. It's so interesting to me. A doctor walks in and says, you know what? Remove the ice. take her off the machines and just let the body fight. And to me, when I hear that story now, it's mind boggling because to me, as a doctor, you take an oath to treat your patient. So to hear the story told that he said, you know what, just let the body fight. At this point, we've done all we could do, take her off the machines and let the body fight. It's a little scary, but at the same time has a good ending, right? Because I'm here today. But nevertheless, took the machine off. They took me off the machines. Removed the eyes, removed the fan, and the body fought. And on its own, it fought on its own. And I was able to wake up, I think the next day. Then the next step was, okay, Julie's been in a coma for 10 days. She's broken the fever. We're still continuing to see her as critical. What are we going to do about the intubation? Because I was intubated for 10 days. At that point, the next step would be the trach. And with the trach, um, everybody had to vote. And I'll never forget, my husband involved my sister, my mom, and everybody had to vote. And the only one against the trach, thank God for my sister, was against the trach was my sister. The first thing she said was, my sister's not going to want a hole in her neck. We're not for it. But at that point, she was outruled. I was scheduled to have the trach. They were going to do some test runs and to make sure I was breathing on my own. And there were some nurses that were non-believers, just believed in science, believed in numbers, and made a comment here or there, well, we'll see. And my sister was adamant. She's like, no, my God is going to pull through. You just wait. Next day, my sister comes into the hospital and the nurse comes running to my sister. And she's like, oh, your sister's breathing. She doesn't need the trach. We were able to take out the tube. She's breathing on her own. And my sister looked at her and was like, yeah, I know. I told you that it was going to happen. That's what happens when you have faith. And so I started breathing on my own. And then at that point, I was transferred from acute, because I'm ICU, then you go to acute. And I went from acute to inpatient rehabilitation. And I remember waking up not really understanding what happened and not recognizing that I could not use the left side of my body. So I woke up paralyzed on the left side of my body, no sensation whatsoever on the left. I did have face drop. I really didn't have a problem communicating because the stroke happened on the right side of the brain, which controls emotions, which is key as to why I was feeling emotional before heading to the hospital, feeling very emotional. I mean, I had extreme emotional ability. I was very, very emotional. Not so much the speech. The stroke happened on the right side of the brain, which impacted the left side of the body. So I just remember, they kind of really didn't even explain to me, like, Julie, you had a stroke. Julie, you can't use the left. I feel like I was left in the dark pretty much the whole time until I had to fire a nurse and an OT and a PT to get answers as to what was going on, because I felt like at that point in the rehabilitation center, there was no empathy towards me whatsoever. I think the first impression coming into an inpatient program, granted, life changing, right? Something life changing has just happened to a 32-year-old mom. And the first thing I'm told is, what are they going to do about your rat's nest of your hair? Because I had a helmet on. At that point, because I had no skull to protect the brain, I was measured for a helmet. And she sees me and she's like, what are they going to do about this rat's nest? And I just remember going off and telling her that she was so rude. I started crying. I didn't really even know what was going on. All I knew was it was so rude. She left the room, and at that point I realized I didn't have any function on the left, is when I was sitting on the chair crying on my wheelchair. And I remember like getting up to lay on the bed and slowly coming back down because I had no movement on the left. And my husband grabbed me by the time I could actually fall down completely and started yelling for the nurse. And then at that point, I was like on risk alert because they probably thought I was just a little crazy, but I wasn't. I was upset and whatnot. So given with that, they put me in intensive, I went into extreme PT, OT, and speech. And I just remember speech was never an issue. So, so boring. They would just talk. There were some things that I could tell were different about me. Like I couldn't write a clock. I couldn't draw a clock. I couldn't remember how to do that. There were like a lot of little kindergarten things that I couldn't remember, but I was still able to communicate my feelings very thoroughly and whatnot. So there were some things. So I went through PT, went through OT, went through speech. And I just remember at that point crying every day, missing my 7 day old baby that was at home, with my mom and family members that were, and really everybody that chimed in to help. All my coworkers from my job stepped in and helped with my children and the baby. And I remember once I was discharged from inpatient, I was walking. I remember going to inpatient and I was walking on, I would lose hope. I'm like, do you think I'll ever like leave here walking in 3 months? And they're like, yes, Miss Gamez, if you just continue pushing, you could do it. I'm like, are you sure? I almost was like, I didn't really believe that I could do it. So I remember being discharged on a cane. And when I was discharged on a cane, I was ready to the next step to get off of the AFO that I had on. I was ready. It's almost like every time there was something that was given to me, I was more eager enough to want to get off of it or work ahead towards just being the new normal, like they say, or whatnot. I think the reason the concept of the new normal to me drives me nuts because I think that the rehabilitation center made me feel like I wasn't normal. I think they talked to me like I was dumb. And I had to try really hard mentally to prove otherwise, that I was normal. Like, no, I'm not like your average stroke survivor. No, I'm okay. I'm different. But I think leaving with that impression was really sad for me or for anybody else, having to feel insecure about yourself and the way you are because of the outside world. And it's a sad thing that these OTs, PTs, and speech therapists don't have empathy and make you feel self-conscious about yourself. That's what makes it very sad. But I remember going home on a cane and my mom saying, I'm going to take on Elise, my 7 day old baby, and I'm going to take care of her for you and you get better. And at that point, if you get better, you can, more than free, you get her back and whatnot. And I remember giving myself 8 months. I'll never forget. I had a 2 story house, my bedroom's downstairs and her bedroom's upstairs. And I gave myself those 8 months to get better, to stepping, to walk, to just almost, it was like a motivation for me. She was my driving force at that point to be better. And 8 months came and went really quick. And I remember asking for her back. And I said, hey, mom, okay, I'm ready for my daughter back. And she didn't want to give her back. She was like, no, you have 3 other daughters. I could keep her. I'm like, no, mom, she needs to come home. And I remember doing everything with one hand. I am dominant on the right side, but I'm affected on the left. So everything I was able to do with the right hand. And I remember a lot of the neuroplasticity kicking in. I remember just problem solving and trying to figure out a way to change her pamper, trying to figure a way to get her bottle and whatnot. And I would walk upstairs, put her in her crib, walk back down with a helmet because they had not put in the skull just yet. I was scheduled 6 months later to have the skull put back in. And that would be surgery number 2. But at that point, between 1 and 2, that 6 month recovery, I was able to start taking care of Annalise on my own, putting her in a high chair with my right hand, giving her a bottle, using my left side to hold down the pamper to just make it work and whatnot. And that's kind of where I was with that. It was just really trying to figure out how to be a mom, a functioning mom with one hand arm, which was my right side. And that's kind of where a lot of the therapy came from those first 6 months. Now, now 6 months have gone by. I'm scheduled for my second surgery. And at this point, now they're ready to put in my original bone in my head. So I'm scheduled for the second surgery. It goes great. They put my original bone flap in and everything's great. And at that point, now that I'm free as can be, I'm able to start walking. And that's kind of where I start incorporating a little bit more of my exercise because I had gained a lot of weight. And so I started walking. Well, I'll never forget. I went walking that day. At that point, I could feel like there was a disconnect between my mouth and my body and my head, and I wouldn't drink water. So all that to say, I suffered a seizure. So I had a seizure. I was spoon feeding Anna, and I just felt this overwhelming sensation come over me, and my tongue went numb. And at that point, I didn't know how to like get a hold of anybody to like come help me. And my husband was cooking us grilled chicken and he had his headphones on. And I just remember slamming on her high chair, like trying to like get his attention. And luckily, he heard me through his headphones. He turned around and I was having a seizure. He laid me on my left side. I remember my eyes twitching to the far left and I knocked out. Woke up a little confused, went to the doctor, and they had told me I suffered a seizure. At that point, they did an MRI and they determined, Ella, that um, my body was rejecting the bone and was eating my skull. And they're like, Julie, if you look at this MRI scans, do you see that your brain, your skull? And I'm like, yeah, what about it? You see all these white spaces? I'm like, yeah. They're like, it looks like your body is rejecting it. It's not recognizing that it's your skull and it's eating it. And I'm like, eating my skull? Okay. So where do we go from here? They're like, well, we're going to have to open you back up because it's not recognizing it and it's eating it. Eventually, what's going to happen, it's going to eat it all and you're not going to have protection around the brain. So we're going to get a step ahead of it and we're going to go ahead and get you measured for a prosthetic. And I'm like, okay. So I go to my neurosurgeon. I'm like, look, neurosurgeon, I have this, it's going to need to come out. I need to get measured. But there's one thing I don't like about my face, and it is this bump. And if you follow me on Instagram, or if you do, I talk a lot about it, but I had this bump on the side of my face. And he's like, oh, it's fine. Very dismissive, right? Oh, it's fine. I could take care of it. And I'm like, you could take care of the bump? Like you can get rid of it? He goes, yeah, I'll get rid of it. And I said, okay, sounds easy breezy to me, right? So he walks out of the room and an RN nurse says, Julie, there is a doctor out there that reconstructs the face. He's called an oral maxillofacial surgeon. And he only deals with pediatrics, but I'm sure he would love you. I'm sure he would take your case. But I think personally, if you reached out to him, he can help you with that bump. And I said, okay. So I called the oral maxillofacial surgeon and I said, Mark, his name was Mark Miller. And I said, Dr. Mark, can I set up a consultation? So I set up a consultation. They take a ton of images of my bump. My love bump is what I call it, but my bump at the time. And he says, Julie, you're a beautiful soul. I would love to tag team with your neurosurgeon and help you reconstruct this bump. And so what I would do is I would grab this muscle. So what this muscle or this bump is your right temporal muscle. And what happens is when the right temporal muscle goes so long without the support of a skull, it dies. And for me, when it dies, it bulges out, right? It doesn't know where to go. So it just bulges out. So when he explained that to me, he's like, I will tag team with doctor, your neurosurgeon, and we could tag team and he'll just focus on protecting the brain and I will focus on pulling the muscle behind the prosthetic so it looks smooth. Great. Okay, sounds great. Let's get this scheduled. So now I'm scheduled in the books. But now at this point, I have to go give blood work just like anybody else does, right? Blood work comes back with a slightly elevated white blood cell count, which means that there's an infection in my body. And at this point, the neurosurgeon is not going to touch me because there's an infection and there's no way that they're going to put a prosthetic skull in my head and with this infection. So at this point, when I'm going in for my third surgery, they go ahead and take the skull out, right? They're going to remove it, but they do a culture swab. And when they do the culture swab, it comes back positive for bacteria. So I had bacteria eating my skull. So it wasn't so much that the body was rejecting the bone or the body was eating it. It was a slow absorbing bacteria that latched onto my bone while it was in the freezer at the bone bank at the time when it was being, I guess, stored there for a while. So because it was stored there for so long, bacteria latched on. They put it in me the second surgery, not knowing that there was bacteria, obviously, right? Until I had my seizure. So when I had the seizure, they did the culture swab. They noticed that there was bacteria. They threw it away. And then I got measured for the prosthetic at that point. So everything kind of was going on at the same time. And I was able to get Mark Miller. I was able to get my neurosurgeon. We finally found out the end result of why my skull was kind of deteriorating at that point by the second. So at that point, they tag team with so going back to So now I give the blood work. I'm going to get this squared away and the bacteria, nobody wants to touch me. So I hire an infectious disease doctor to kind of find the root causes to where the infection is so we could treat it because at this point, I'm anxious. I want my skull. I'm tired of wearing a helmet. What do we got to do to speed things along? And at that point, um, nobody's touching me. Infectious disease doctor isn't doing much. So now I have to advocate more. I end up firing the infectious disease doctor because they're not really doing much. I hire a new one. And at that point, they determine that that's just my number, that this white blood cell count being so high isn't clearly that I have an infection per se. It's that that's just my number. So they clear me for surgery. All that to say, they clear me for surgery. And when I get opened up, at this point, I'm getting opened up. I'm going to have my reconstruction done on my face. At that point, they discovered because I had waited so long that the muscle, there was only 92% muscle left to pull back. And because there was really nothing to pull back behind the prosthetic to smooth out the face, they had to close me back up because there was no consent as to where to go from there, right? They could have either shaven down the bone, but again, there was really no talks about how much muscle had been lost from the first consultation to now. So at that point, they close me back up. I wake up, I see the bulge, I'm not happy. And he's like, we're gonna have to let it sit, come back in a year. So I saw him for up to a year. And then he broke the news and said, okay, Julie, so this is what it is. You can have a fifth surgery and we could shave down the bone, but I'll tell you with that, be pre-warned that it's going to start messing with nerves if we shave down your bone, or we just let it be. And, it is what it is. And I'll never forget that afternoon. I just remember going to eat Chinese food, so sad and, like really feeling defeated. And I get a phone call directly from the oromaxillofacial surgeon. He said, Julie, I was talking to a colleague of mine and we thought, listen, what if we start giving you Botox and administering the Botox to your bump in hopes to atrophy the muscle, which means making the muscle smaller, which can make your eyes a little bit wider to see because it was very slanted. My face was very, very slanted, big bump. And again, he said, you know what? It's cosmetic. It's going to cost money. I don't know if that's something you can afford, but it's worth a try. And I was already saying yes. I didn't even know about the amount. I didn't care. All I knew was I just wanted to see results. And so I went home to my husband. He said, yes, let's make it work. And I started getting the Botox injections, not only on my left side for the spasticity, but also for the bump as well. So I would get them pretty often, specifically for both. And so I started getting the Botox on the bump for about a year. And I will say that from then to now, I'm 8 years post-stroke now, it's gone down significantly. But honestly, I've gotten to the point where I've just truly loved me for me and accepted it for me. And so that's kind of where I'm at now with that. Now, as far as my stroke journey, having my fourth surgery, I just had my fourth surgery in December. Now I'm ready to go back to work. I pre-stroke, I had a leadership position at a bank, and I was determined and eager to go back. Granted, with one hand, I could type, I could make it work. And I remember, talking to my family and just mentioning, I really want to go back to work. I really want to try it out. I'm normal. It's going to be different. I know it is. And I remember going into back into work. Okay, so the stroke happened in I'm sorry, the surgery, the last prosthetic surgery happened in December of 2018. By January of 2019, I'm walking into work. I mean, not even a month after having my last surgery, I'm walking into work, leadership position, and ready to just kind of lead with that. And I remember everybody was kind of worried. I started off slowly. I went in only working 2 hours a day. I want to say, yeah, 2 hours a day, 10 hours a week, and gradually till I could gradually increase to 40 hours. My VP was excited for me to come back. Everybody was excited. I had so much support and love from my teams that I mean, I was just ready to go back. So with that being said, I went back to work. I eased into it, and then I want to say like 4 or 5 months in, I just I just had to keep it real with myself. And I was like, you know what? I'm just different. And what I mean by different is when I would type, I would forget to hit the space bar. There were like little things I started to notice about myself that just weren't the same. I would get overstimulated. Granted, my department granted me some. They actually really helped me with a lot of the speak device, where I could speak into the device and it would type it out for me. So they definitely met me halfway there, but it just wasn't the same. It was just a lot. And I think at the end of the day, I just had to come to terms that it was different. And I had to be okay with that. And I was ready to transition from this leadership role to being a mom role full time. And it was very hard, I will say that. My adjusting to the new norm, being at home, was very, very hard and challenging. But so that's kind of where I'm at now in my life. I said goodbye to my job and started really engaging more in being more present, more in the present with my kids. And it was the best thing that I could have done for me and my family. And that's kind of where I'm at today. So fast forward today in life. Now my girls are older. My 7 to 8 year old is now 8 years old. I have a 21 year old. I have a 20 year old. I have now a 13 year old and an 8 year old. So I mean, the span of children is there, right? The age gap, but they've all understood mom is different. I remember coming back from the hospital and saying, hey, it's not mom anymore. Being Latina, being Hispanic, mom always wants to do everything. I'm just very much of a go-getter. I like to cook, clean, well, not cook, sorry. I like to clean, correction. I love to clean. I like to be ahead of things, but nevertheless, I just remember telling my kids things have changed and the dynamic changed tremendously for my kids. And I think just explaining to them, allowing them to see in the vulnerability side versus the I'm strong, I don't feel nothing, I can conquer it all. I actually allowed myself to let them see that part of me. So they understood that it is very frustrating on my end. Although it's perceived to them that I'm angry, no, there's really under the anger is hurt. And a lot of that was a lot of that tone that I felt towards my recovery. And I will say that as the years went on, things have gotten better. We have better understanding as to how I am, how I function. When I feel anxious, I tend to get worked up pretty quickly. My girls already know, like, to reassure me, like, mom, it's fine. A lot of the frustration lies between me not being able to do it with two hands. So I definitely went through I went through so many trials. Like, I went through living my life through other people's hands. I would see people using both of their hands, and oh my God, I was just like, oh, I wish I could do that. Or, oh, and so I went through a time in my life where I went through that stage as well. So I've kind of been through a lot of those stages in my recovery period and still now, right? And so now that my girls are older, I love that they have a better understanding with anybody with a disability and how they can help. Now it's like, oh, mom needs help with her bra. Who's going to help? And now everybody's like a subject matter expert putting on mom's bra because everybody already knows what mom expects and how to help mom. Nevertheless, helping myself, but the support goes a long way. And so all that to say, now in my recovery, I love being that support for other women and men. I've had men reach out to me and just ask about different things. Parents that have reached out to me as well. And I will say that being a parent is challenging, but I will say that just keeping that communication and allowing yourself to your kids helped a lot for me. And so that's why I love posting what I do post on my Instagram to give some insight that I'm still who I am. I'm still funny. I keep it real, but I also come with a lot of what's worked for me, stories, experiences. So when you reached out to me to share my story, I was more for it because I feel like there's a lot of moms that have gone through what I've gone through, having either being pregnant and having a stroke. So when at the end of the day, everybody has to medically tie how the stroke happened, and they say it was eclampsia. They wouldn't say preeclampsia because it wasn't before my or during my pregnancy. It was never flagged like, oh, you have preeclampsia, you got to take care of you. No, it was after the fact. And what today is crazy is that a lot of doctors don't focus on the aftermath of the baby. They focus primarily when you're pregnant, but not after the fact. And I've noticed in a lot of people that I've met that eclampsia is real. It can happen. You can have no signs, you can have no blood pressure issues, but it happens after the fact. And for me, that's what happened. And I'm sure, I've met a lot, well, I am sure there's a lot of women out there that have had that happen to them after their birth.
Julie, on that note,
Yeah,
I wanted to jump in,
sure.
one, to open the floor for questions, but also because you say that, I am like, wow, I just learned something new. Because when you were sharing your story, you said clamsia, and me, I'm not a mom, hope to be one day. I was like, clamsia, isn't it preeclampsia? There's the prime example. I had no idea, right, that something that could happen
Yeah.
after.
Yep. And not a lot
And
of people know about that, you know?
yeah,
Not a
and
lot of people
so
know, but everybody's like, oh, I had preeclampsia. Well, no, it's clamsia. So it's
yeah.
after the fact. Yeah. And a
So on
lot
that
more women
note,
have it after, you know?
I I'll open the floor then because I know we have a few moms and parents that are
Sure.
with us, moms and dads. So if
Sure.
anybody has any questions for Julie, can be related to parenting, cannot be related. It can be related to recovery within the one side, OTPT. Now is the time to do it. You can unmute yourself as usual and share.
I'll just say, first of all, hi everybody. It's Julie. I also Julie.
Hi,
Um,
Julie.
I wasn't here right at the beginning of the meeting, but I'm super glad that Ella was able to take over the beginning of the meeting. But oh my goodness, Julie, like the determination. I'm just so impressed, and I admire you so much. Yeah,
Thank you for that.
yeah,
Appreciate it. I really do. It's been a journey. And even given that I was so young, you think 32, I see a lot of 32-year-olds now, and I'm like, oh, I was that young, and
yeah.
still trying to figure out life in itself. But to have this life-changing event happen so young, it's definitely it's an eye opener, for sure.
Yeah, it really gets you to appreciate life, and what
Yeah,
you
it
do have.
does.
Yeah.
And age doesn't discriminate. I was so young.
Yes.
That's why when
Yes.
I meet a lot of older women, no, us
Yeah.
as women, when we put our mind to something, we're going to do it. Find your driving force and go with that, right? Granted, we're all different in our recovery stages. So that's kind of where I see it at. I was too, I didn't have a school for so long, but I still had to make it work. And I think like there is some fight in us. I truly believe that there's some fight in us, so yeah, but I appreciate that.
I want to jump in to say thank you, Julie, for sharing your story. This is Erica. I
Hi,
reached out
Erica.
to Julie when I saw her on her Instagram and I saw her exercising. She's just such an inspiration. Thank you for sharing your story and thank you for inboxing me and just
Most definitely. I am definitely there for everybody. And all everybody, what I mean, not just women, but everybody. But nevertheless, Erica, I just want to be that inspiration for you because I was there, right? Granted, it's been 8 years, but I could speak to that. And if I could speak to that, I'm going to definitely shed more light as to what worked for me. What was my driving force? And not only that, but don't lose hope because I feel like there are some people that don't have the advantage that may some of us or don't have is support. And that's why stroke community is so real to me. Like, and it's funny, like I'll kind of like to my horn to everybody. I'm like, yeah, because we have a stroke world. You know how y'all have y'all's fitness gurus? Well, we have our stroke gurus. I'm kind of like we have our own thing going on, which is true. We do. We have like our own community. We're strong. I feel like the encouragement. I get more of the encouragement from my stroke survivor friends than I do my family and friends. So that's why I'm so big on the stroke world for sure.
yeah, thank you, Ella, also for putting this together. Or is it Julie that puts it together? The monthly meetings.
Both of us, both of us. We tag team. Well, yeah, yeah.
Last month was my first monthly meeting with you guys, and this one, when I saw Julie was going to be on there, I said, I'm definitely
Oh,
coming.
yay.
Oh,
Yay. That's
that's
what we love to
awesome.
hear.
I love having a community.
Same,
Thank you.
same.
For me, I had a stroke because of high blood pressure also.
And was it after the baby?
So no, my children were already grown up. I was 46 years old and my
Okay.
husband was on a like a vacation honeymoon type thing on
Okay.
a cruise. And I should have been taking my high blood pressure medication, but I thought, oh, I'm young, I'm never gonna have a stroke. I'll
Right.
lose some weight. And I just thought on the cruise, I'll eat healthy and I'll go to the gym every day.
Okay.
And it
And
just
that was your thought process at that time, right? So then wait, so when you had the stroke on the cruise, did you have signs or no?
No, no signs at all.
Really? So how did you know you were having a stroke, or how did you know to seek medical advice, or
So my stroke, my doctor says it happened because it was the perfect storm. I had had too many tequilas, and then
okay?
we were just hot on the cruise, and we went back to the room and we were exercising. And then
We're
all of a sudden I couldn't put my arms around my husband, and I said, "Oh, Johnny, I can't hug you. Call 911." And that's how I knew. I couldn't put my arms around him.
which arm couldn't you move?
I left.
Got it. So you were affected on your left side. Okay, so
Left.
you use the right a lot.
Thank goodness. I know to say thank God, but thank God
Well,
I'm
you know,
okay.
okay, what are your thoughts? And this could be for everybody. I don't know if everybody feels comfortable sharing, but what are your thoughts in regards to the survivors that are affected on the right side that are the dominant versus us who have the opportunity to use the right versus the left, right? What are your thoughts about that?
So I'm grateful that it was on my left,
Yeah,
because right side is my dominant side, and I did
right.
return to work. I was a principal, and I was determined that I was going to go back to my school because I was the founding principal. And I went
Wow.
back 8 months after I had the stroke.
So you went back too? Okay.
I went back, but I couldn't stay on
Me
for
too. I
years,
was 5 months, 6 months.
years, a year and a half, right? Was it a year and a half? And then I had to step down, and I took a remote position with the Department of Education. So I'm still in leadership, but thank God I am now, I'm a hearing officer, just listening to grievances, and I can work from home. So
That
now
is so awesome to hear that you still have a job,
I still have my career,
a
because that was
career.
one of
Yes.
my biggest tragedies was, oh my goodness, we're going to lose the house, we're going to lose everything because
So
our
many factors.
career.
Yes, I understand. Trust me, I understand.
My husband and my children, I feel like, oh my goodness, we put in so many years of my education going in on the weekend so I can get my administrative license, going in all summer. And to lose that and not have a job, there was no way. So I pushed myself to return to work because I was in fear of I'm going to lose my
All the
administrative.
insecurity. Yes, of course. And it's crazy how stress gets us, right? Again. And so, like, how does it feel working now? Like, how do you feel like typing with one hand? Do you get frustrated sometimes? For me, using that space bar is what gets me, it drives me nuts. But
Oh, no, not at
I
all.
just, my brain cannot remember to hit that space bar. It drives me crazy. But how is it for you?
First, when I first took the job as a hearing officer for the Department of Education, it
Uh-huh.
was very frustrating because I took my job too serious, and I was trying to complete all of the grievances all in that same week so that I would do a great job and I wouldn't get fired.
Right.
Lo and behold, this last summer, this is when I reached out to you again. I had a nervous breakdown. I don't know, an emotional
Yeah.
breakdown, and I had to slow down. Luckily, my job allowed that. They gave me just an opportunity to catch up on the hearings that I
To
had.
reset and refocus. I agree. I
And now
totally
I work very flexible hours. I
yeah.
have to thank the department for that because right now I just listen to afternoon grievances. And in the morning, I have all morning to type and do that work. So
So you can work at your own pace at that point,
I
right?
work at my own pace
Yeah,
now. Yes.
that's so awesome. And it's funny because what I would do to work, right? Because I've been working since I was 17. Granted, that's why my kids are so old, but or older. And I miss that part of working. I just want to feel productive. So you should see my house. It's people walk in, they're like, a family of six lives in this house. I'm like, yeah, because I'm
Practically
just
clean.
I do everything with the right. I'm like doing the shutters with the vacuum. And I need to give more insight on that because people will see. I never sit down. I'm always up and about. I'm always doing things. I'm always on 10, driving my kids places, vacuuming,
So I
washing
have
the
a question
restroom.
for you,
Sure,
Julie, because you
sure.
talked about how you love to cook and clean. When you
Oh, I
first
don't cook, but I'll correct you. Clean. Yes. What about
Okay. When you first started getting back to cleaning and being a homemaker, were
it?
you doing things from your wheelchair? Because that's what I find.
No, 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 no. So I didn't start really cleaning until remember I still had the skull. I didn't have a skull for a while. So I had the helmet. I'd rather sit on the couch than put that dumb helmet on. So I remember I was like so against that helmet. And there were times I would get up and walk around my husband like, sit down, because if you fall, that's it, you're done. And I'm like, fine. So I didn't right away start cleaning until I started walking. So listen, when I started walking before the seizure, I already had my skull put back in. At that point, I had a little bit more mobility. I started walking every day. And with walking, I even bought a T. Do you remember what it was called, babe? That I would work out in front of the TV. It was a CD with that really cute trainer that would do exercises. It was like,
Shanti,
what is it?
the Shanti.
Yes. Oh, yes, him. So I bought it. I bought the CD pack and I put it on a DVD. I even bought a portable DVD player, put it to my TV, and I would just march in place, right? With no thing. I would start off marching in place. I looked a fool, but I don't care. In my head, I was just kind of following what he would do. And I stuck to that for 25 minutes every day in my house because I wasn't comfortable going outside just yet, having everybody see my left hanging. I wasn't there yet. So it's very normal to feel uncomfortable, insecure, not comfortable in your skin at that point. So I did a lot of home workouts at my house. Then I transitioned to wanting to clean. And at that point, I would get the vacuum with one hand and I have a video too where I would do shutters, I would sweep, I would mop with one hand. Again, it's not the best mopping, but what I could do. And then I would remind myself to use the left. They're like, use the left, you can use the left, even if it means you're just putting it to work, just do it. And slowly but surely, I'll still try to remind myself to use the left, but it's just so much easier to use the right. So, but with the cleaning household stuff,
Sorry.
oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just gonna jump in. There are a couple of people with their hand up, and I just want to make sure we get to them.
Yes, go ahead.
So Jeremy, you had your hand up first, so I'll let you jump in and ask the question, and then Aaron will get to you afterwards. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Hi, thanks for sharing. I'm left side affected. I'm a left hand dominant. I
Okay.
wanted to hear about the technology used for the computer.
Oh, like what the tools or what the yeah, the not the tools, the
Yeah,
equipment you mean, that they use?
yeah, because I'm not working yet, but I'm in school, and when I'm typing stuff for homework, I'm just like
It gets
wiped out.
challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wiped out with one hand. So I'm like, then after a point with the homework, I'm like, fuck this shit. And then I
Yes,
just kind
it's
of,
overwhelming, right? It gets so frustrating. So
it
the
is.
equipment, so I totally hear you. So with the equipment that I use that they would use at the, do you remember what it was called, babe? The equipment was called, the equipment that I was used, that they compensated, that I would speak into the device and it would Dragon Speak. That was the name of the equipment. And I
Okay.
can actually get more in detail and message you if you don't mind. If you really
Yeah,
want
that's
to know
cool.
more about that, yeah, I don't mind.
I think I follow you anyway.
Oh, you do? Okay. Hey, even better. So if you want to send me a message and I could get the Dragon Speak is what I use. And I would just speak into it and it would type everything out and it made things better. So, so yeah, kind of what I would use at that point.
Thanks for the advice.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Why is your video on, dude? You're all eating.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy.
Excuse me?
I think somebody is just, oh, Lori, you might be, would you be able to just hit mute if you're able to? And then, Aaron, if you want to jump in and ask the question.
Yes, I know Lori, but yes, go ahead.
No, thank you so much. It's wonderful to hear like from someone who this happened when they were a mom. This happened about a year after I gave birth to my second son. So he turned 1 while I was in inpatient. Yeah, and
So how long did you stay in inpatient for?
About 2 months.
Okay, okay.
And then I rehabbed at my parents' house, and my husband stayed with the 2 boys for like 7 months. But one thing that I was curious about is like how I know you have a big wide range of kids, like age range, but how you with the youngest felt like how you dealt with being only able to use one side. Because I find it really frustrating to think like, oh, my kids are never going to have like a fully functioning mom.
That's a really good question. And let me tell you that it was hard because I had two hands for my other three, right? Now my 4-year-old, and I'm thinking, okay, who's gonna do her hair? Am I coming to the terms of how can I ever do her hair? Who's gonna bathe her? How am I gonna bathe her if I can't even bathe myself with one hand? And I will tell you this, Erin, that I had a lot of guilt. Oh my God. Like I would cry to my husband. I'm like, I feel like she's traumatized of water because I remember her being a girl, having to put her head back and having to wash her head with one hand. The water would get in her face. And so now she has anxiety to this day with water. And I feel like I'm at blame for that because there was only so much I could do with one hand. Did I ever let that stop me from trying to bathe her? No, but it did teach me to slow things down and not work at my pace, but rather than her pace, because I was like, just hurry, just you're fine. I would downplay, like, you're fine, it's fine, it's just water, just it's real quick, it's a real quick thing. It's quick, it's quick, it's quick. But it wasn't, right? At that point, I really wasn't taking the time to understand her feelings a little bit better and seeing like, okay, my kid fears the water because of me. And I feel so bad that I cannot, if I just had two hands to just gently tilt her head back and wash her hand, it would be great. She would not even go through this at all. It wouldn't even be a question in her mind. And so I will say that the only thing on my side was time. That's the only thing that to now that she's 8 years old helps me a lot. So like, I still feel like an effective mom, even if that means like, oh, curling her hair with the curling iron with one hand. I'll try to get like the left hand. Granted, I have mobility, but I have a severe weakness on the left. So my fingers play and my thumb are very, like I shake and whatnot. So I just remember like implementing, like I'll hold the hair, I'll use the right, and I'll curl her hair with the right side. Granted, it wasn't the best curl, but it was something that was like a win for me. I'm like, oh, do you like it? She's like, oh yeah, mom. I mean, it wasn't the best curl. It was very sloppy, but it was still something that I'm still learning to try to work through to not feel bad short, because I feel like I'm shortchanging her. If I had to keep it very real, I feel like I'm shortchanging my kid. But you can't feel like that. You just can't. I think that every year that passes, I make it a celebration with Anna. She's like, oh, is it because your hand's broken? I'm like, no, it's not broken, but thank you for reminding me to use it. Mommy needs to use it more. So I kind of turn it around for her where it's a positive thing. It's not a bad thing, right? It's just a reminder to me to say, hey, mom, use your left. And then there's sometimes I'm like, hey, don't be telling me what to do. I'll use my left, where I try not to get so defensive because she's telling me what to do. But nevertheless, I know that whatever you feel, whether it's sad, guilt, shortchanging, it will get better as he gets older. But just all we could do is the best that we know, right? And if that means something small, like for me, opening a bottled water, I'll literally use my shoulder, I mean my elbow. I'll hold it and I'll open it for her. I will say this too, in addition to feeling that way, field trips. I am intimidated by field trips. And I posted about this one time and I was crying. I made a video. I'm like, I feel guilty. I could never go to a field trip. What if another student asked me to open their water and I can't? What am I going to do? And what if they ask me, what's wrong with your hand? What's wrong with your arm? You know, how do you respond to a 8-year-old? What do you say? I've never been asked that, but if I did, I do keep it very real with Anna. And I'm like, oh, is it because of your stroke? Yep. Mommy has a hard time using her left. Yes, mom has a hard time not feeling, but it's okay. Mommy's working at getting better. Mommy goes to therapy and whatnot. So going back to the field trips and all these things that I'm sure play in your mind as well, right? But I think what I've learned that I'm not there yet, but I won't go to a field trip by myself. I'll take my husband and I'll just be the chaperone next to him, but I'll still be the support because Anna wants a present parent, right? And we don't want our limitations to enable our kids growing up and them thinking, well, mom was never there because she was too insecure or mom was there. No, just still be present. Even with the little that you do have, I would recommend that still be present and just kind of work through that and understand what he wants as a mom and give him what he can. And I remember meeting Ella. She started this group and she wanted, this group was called Create a Healthy Habit. And one of the habits that I wanted to implement with my kids was reading them a book. Granted, I knew I couldn't give them the physical part, but I could give them the affectional part of reading a book and doing the voiceovers and making it fun for them, right? At such a young age. So I found a way to still engage them and know mom's still present, if that makes sense, you know? I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I don't know if you ever had this, but I find myself like I'm jealous. I'm so thankful that my husband's fine and that I have a husband and that because I don't know what I would do with the
Right.
two kids.
What side are
But
you affected on really quick?
my left, so my
Okay.
non-dominant, and I will say that it happened because of an AVM, and so I was always born with it. So my left side was always weaker than the norm.
But it's your dominant. That's
no, my left.
Oh,
So
your left is
I mean,
non-dominant,
now
right?
now it is really special, but it always like there are certain things that I realize now that I did with my right that most people that have both hands don't. Like so
Yeah.
I'm trying to remind myself of that, but like I feel like there's a thing of the road class trips, like you just said. Like I feel like I want to do all that. I want to be on the PTA and I want to do all these things. Um, and
Hey,
so
and
yeah, it's a hard
it just means this.
realization.
Look at me. I'm using the left. So if I'm at a PTA meeting and I'm like, hey guys, thanks for joining, I'm incorporating the left. And it's all about just rewiring that left and not forgetting about it. People are gonna look, right? Because granted, I go to the gym, people always look at the unknown, and the unknown is the left because that's a physical part that they're gonna notice automatically. But I got into a place where I'm so comfortable. Like when I tell my story, I'm like, yeah, and I'll try to like punch someone or do something because I'm gonna engage my left. So going back to what you were saying, I think like the field trips, right? Like we mentioned, using that, but you said something, feeling envious of people using their left. I went through that as well. I know I mentioned that as well, but it gets better. How far out are you on your stroke?
Uh, about 2.5 years, but
Okay.
I'm not done with the AVM. So
It's
it's
still
been
a
a
work.
two and a
Yeah,
half
you have
years
to
that's
monitor it.
still,
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a malformation, right? In the back of your.
Yeah, so I'm doing like radio surgery.
Yeah. Okay.
But it bled like 3 times, but
So did you
only
have
one of
your
them.
testicle moved?
No, I didn't have to. I had a drain
Okay. To
in
drain
there,
it.
but
Yeah.
yeah, and then it evened itself out. I had to drain twice,
Uh-huh.
but no, I saw others in rehab that had to do that, but I didn't have to.
Okay. I did go through that where I was envious or not jealous, but I just love living. I would look at their hand. I'm like, oh, like I would find it fascinating. I'm like, oh, I know I was like that one time, like when I see people. But what I have to say about that is I went skydiving for the first time. Listen, with the affected side, right? And I went to South Padre Island for vacation. And I was like, I want to get on there, but I don't know because I don't feel on the left. But they're and my weight, I was like, are they gonna decline me because I'm heavy set? But I get there and they're like, yes, we can accommodate you. I'm like, oh, but I'm a stroke survivor. Are you sure? Like I can get on the thing? They're like, yes, ma'am, you can. I'm like, okay. And I have a video on my Instagram page, and you'll see my arm caved in the whole time. I don't care. All I'm ready is to explore and live life and not allow this to define me or stop me, right? And so at that point, I got on with my daughter, took my phone up, even though I wasn't supposed to, but I didn't care. I took my little right hand, took my phone, and I just enjoyed the ocean, enjoyed being up in the air. Now, it was hard coming down to get back up, but hey, there's a lot of men on there. They all helped me get up, and I did it, and I lived. And that's when I was like, you know what? I could do this. I could do it. Why am I limiting myself? Yes, I can't feel, and yes, it's going to be challenging, and yes, it's a lot of work. Like I'll see we went to a skating rink, and I loved to rollerblade when I was younger. And when I see people rollerblade, I'm like, oh, I don't have sensation. I would fall right away. I probably won't go there. Now I kind of downplay it. I'm like, oh, roller skating is outdated. Who wants to do that now, right? I'd rather run or do something else. That's like outplayed. But nevertheless, there's those times too where I'll just kind of downplay, like, it's okay. I don't need to do that. It's beyond me. I'm better. However I want to paint it. But nevertheless, I will say, hopefully it gets to a place for you where you don't continue to live that way, because it's just not healthy. It's all a matter of just kind of accepting this is where you're at and just incorporating the left as much as you can. I've shared with a lot of women what I did for me, weight bearing, just remembering to use the left. And those were like little small things for me, you know? Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Yes, sorry. I was like, what was that? Okay. Okay.
Awesome. Erica, I see you have your hands up. You can
Yes,
go
I
ahead.
just wanted to compliment Julie for saying that the advice that she gave to be present is so important, and it's something that I'm trying to practice so much right now, even like with my yoga, just being present in this moment. I think that when I had my stroke, and for many of us, we have our stroke, and it's like we're living in a past and we want to be this person that we were before, or a person that we hope to be in the
Agree.
future.
Yep.
But we need to just embrace this present moment.
Yep.
And I love that you said that you wanted to teach your children that you're not going to be insecure about whatever disability you have
Yep.
or we have. We just need to push forward and show them our confidence, because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
what we want to teach our children, regardless of our
No,
disability.
and at the same time, like I mentioned as well, like showing that vulnerability part of you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's okay to show them the sad part of it, right? It's not just rainbows and but oh, you suffered a stroke, life. No, it is. But as a mom, we want to keep our kids guarded, right? We want to guard our emotions. We don't want it to overflow on them. We don't want them to feel sad for us because we're already feeling that for ourselves, nevertheless. But we want them to have a better understanding of where we're coming from and why I yell. Why am I anxious? Why is mom always in a mood? And there's times I'll funny story. So contacts. I need help opening this eyeball to put the contacts in. And the right, easy breezy, I could just pop it in, but the left one I can't. So everybody has to rock, paper, scissors on who's going to hold mom's eye, because mom will literally get crazy if you do not keep her eye open wide enough and it pops out, right? So my husband's like, babe, that's not healthy, but you need to figure out how to do it because all the girls are scared of you. And I'm like, but it's not that. It's the frustrating part that I can't do it on my own. That's where the frustration gears from. And he's like, okay, so if you explain that to them, I think they have better understanding and can maybe just be a little bit more not what's the word, be a little bit more not understanding, like what's the word, it's like they can
Empathetic.
have more perspective, I guess, about it,
Yeah.
Oh, were you gonna say something, Ella?
Well, I was just gonna say empathetic.
Empathetic, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, come on, your mom's struggling here. It's not you per se. It's the frustration behind the why I can't do it, because I can't do it with one hand. So get this. So I go home and I try and I try and I try. And I'm proud to say I learned how to do it with one hand. So, and they're colored contacts. So I need to make sure that I'm not going to do LASIK. I'm not going to do glasses, because everybody's like, oh, just do glasses. I'm like, no, I'm not settling. My life, yes, it changed, but I'm not going to settle. I want to wear the contacts. I'm going to learn. I'm going to figure it out. Where there's a will, there's a way. And so every day I would practice. I popped in the contact and everybody was so relieved. Nobody had to do rock, paper, scissors anymore to take a risk on mom and see what they got. But nevertheless, going back to being in the present and explaining to our kids is very crucial. And counseling, I am a big advocate about counseling, because I feel like understanding the emotion part of it, and especially for stroke survivors, especially for the ones that have suffered on the right side of the brain, which impacts our emotions, right? For me, the right temporal lobe was impacted. Emotion, ability I had for sure. And they always say if you struggled with something pre-stroke, it's heightened times 100 after the stroke, which I already know. I was already impulsive. I talked already loud. I mean, on my report cards as a kid, Julie's a loud talker and talks very loud, can't use your inside voice, whatever. So imagine now it's heightened, but it's understanding my diagnosis and understanding, recognizing, and learning to be more mindful of that. And so with that being said, I've learned to be that with all of my kids. And my kids, again, 21, teenager to adults to now 8-year-old. It's a whirlwind of fun. I think I should have a reality show, literally, because I'm very big about listening to my kids. I'm very big about communicating, understanding. I listen more to understand, right? And not to just correct and shut them down. No, it's more understanding where they're coming from and what they see and what they saw, because it was traumatic seeing their mom in the hospital, or they didn't, and seeing their mom with face drop, and seeing their mom with no skull, and seeing their mom be the ugliest version of herself, meaning physical. I just remember looking in the mirror and feeling so ugly about myself, and having no hair, losing all the hair from the radiation. It was just a mess. But I will always say that it's going to be ugly at first before it gets better. And that's kind of where I'm at with things in life in general. Even with my weight loss, if you look at my weight loss, I am not giving up on my journey. I'm going to keep pushing forward. And, sometimes I always think like, okay, what's next for me when I do reach my goal? It's always going to be improving on self. There's always something to improve in our lives, right? Whether it's within the family, whether it's physical, whether internal and or emotional. But at this point in my life, that's kind of where I'm at on my journey, is my weight loss journey. So yeah.
Julie, you are amazing. And so much of what I'm hearing
Yeah.
from this conversation is tenacity. Like to be tenacious.
I like that
Whenever,
word.
and I love that. Like when people ask me what's your biggest skill, like what do you bring to the table, Ella? Tenacity is what I like to say. It might not be the top salesperson or the top this, but like I'm gonna work my butt off at literally anything I try to do. And I
Yeah.
think as all of us here who have gone through something so difficult, one of the hardest
Traumatic,
times in our
yes,
lives,
right.
stroke survivor, whatever difficulties you may have faced, you have to be tenacious and work your butt off. Like it's supposed to be hard. It sucks, but it's supposed to be hard. And that means it's probably going to work.
And people ask, how do you do it? You just do it. You find your driving force, you find what's going to work for you. Everybody's different, right? Everybody has their own insecurities. Everybody has something. There's
Mhm.
always something. But settling is just not an option for me. It's just really not. And I don't like to use age. I kind of, it's a hit or miss. I really don't like to say, oh, it's because you're young, it's because you're driven. No, it goes back. We're all impacted. I know, Ella, you were very young, but all along, where are you at now? You're thriving. You have your own support group, right? You didn't stop living. You could have at such a young age, but you kept moving, and you're still moving, and you're doing great. So I don't like to just use that as oh, it's because you're young. Your recovery is better because you're young. Now, I would love to get more of a older stroke survivors perspective on their life. I've never had that happen yet. I would like to join more groups that have more of the engage of the older stroke community, just to kind of get and learn from them. I'm all for learning and seeing what I can gain from that knowledge, for sure.
I love that. And oh, I wish when we post this for other
Uh-huh.
people to see, I hope that other people hear it and they comment their perspective because yeah,
It
I
would be
think our
great to
lives
hear
will
like,
help
oh,
you.
well, what happened for you? What worked for you? And
Mm,
maybe it was hard. I don't know, right? That's why I'm like, I would be so intrigued. Can you teach me something? Show I want to learn, definitely want to learn to be not so much be ahead of the game, but just to know for sure. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Cool. Jeremy, I see you have your hand up. Go for it.
Yes, it was a guy curiosity question. What's a eclampsia? I heard it from another stroke survivor, heard it from
Yeah.
another non-stroke survivor.
Yeah.
Just curious.
It's just high blood pressure. It's pretty much
Okay,
when you have high blood pressure during your pregnancy.
got
That's
it.
kind of really what it ties down to, is having high blood pressure. Even though I didn't
Okay.
have it throughout my pregnancy, no signs of high blood pressure. And I was heavy set my whole pregnancy. Before my pregnancy, had no signs. But shortly after giving birth is when it happened. That's why I was saying in our group, like a lot of people don't talk about the aftermath. And it's more common now so that it's happening after. So just
Have you ever met that girl from Arizona that she had a stroke after birth?
Zavdi, yeah, we have the same
Yeah,
stories.
yeah.
funny. Zabby
Yeah.
also had the same thing happen to her too. I know my other friend Andrea, same thing, very, very similar story. Me and Zabby, I think, are more of we had our very similar surgeries kind of around the same time. Our surgeries, the only difference is that she was affected on the right side of her body, which is the left side of her brain, and mine was on the right side of my brain. So that's the
Yeah, I
only.
remember hearing the story, and then it clicked when I heard your story.
Yeah. So I had the same thing, 4 surgeries, have the love bump the same. I've embraced that, and it's all about just loving it, and it is what it is. I remember just being negative and saying I look like Quasimodo. Like, I just remember just being in a place. But again, we go through these stages where it was just, or
You're
I was insecure about
beautiful,
putting my hair in a
Julie.
ponytail. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I just wanted to say you're beautiful, Julie, and your personality, you're just so bright.
Thanks, Erica. Thank
You're
you for that.
beautiful.
I appreciate it. I
You're-
definitely appreciate it.
No one
Oh,
noticed
thanks,
the thumb.
honey. Thanks, honey. I appreciate that. It's funny. I make a joke because my husband's like, "You're just so beautiful." I'm like, "You just love me for my handicap placard." I make jokes because we cannot just be so.
Yeah, you gotta have fun with it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gotta have fun with it. I do that to
You
my
do. I'm
family
like, you
too.
just love me
When
for
we
my
go,
handicap placard that you got to get front row parking for my disability. Like, get out of here. He's like,
when
stop
we
that. No, you're beautiful. You
when
know,
we pull into a place, I tell everybody in the car, "You're welcome.
you what?
You're welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's welcome
Yeah.
for getting good parking spot."
Yeah. Literally.
You
Literally.
have to do it. You have to have some fun with it to a
Yeah, you
degree.
do. You do. You have to make some sense of it. Or like, I'll try to do something to impress my husband with the left hand. Like, I'll like try to stretch out my hand or do something with my thumb. And he's like, "Oh, wow. When did you start doing that?" I'm like, "Oh, I've been doing that." He's like, "Oh, okay." So I'll try to like show off for him. It's so cute. But he's the only one that like, I guess, acknowledges. And then I just try to act like, "Oh, it was nothing." But secretly, I love that he recognizes those little things about my hand, but I just don't like when he tries to tell me what to, like, "Oh, babe, implement the left." I'm like, "No, I'll implement it when I'm ready." So there's still part
Right.
of the defensiveness that wants to come in, but for the most part, you have to have fun for sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
So Erin has her hand up, and then
Sure.
after you answered, Haas just put a question in the
Okay,
comments.
sure.
So Erin, we can go ahead.
Now I forgot. This
Oh,
happens
bummer.
a lot.
No, tell me, it's okay.
But I'm trying to think if I can remember. You might have to come back to me.
Okay.
No problem. Then we can maybe go into the comments. Haas asked, how often do you use your left hand?
Haas, why are you asking that?
Because
I don't know if I want to.
it's your affected hands. You have to use a little bit of it, right?
I agree, Haas. Very good point. So,
Right?
hey, I'm using it right now as we speak. So that's a great reminder. Okay, honestly, I help my mom. So, okay, guys. So aside from being a house mom, right? I help my parents clean with their cleaning business. Granted, I don't work, so I like to make extra money. And my mom offered me an opportunity to help her vacuum a medical office. And I go 4 days a week. Best believe I'm going to get my Monday off. So I go Tuesday through Friday and I vacuum with the right side, right? I vacuum. And what do you think I'm doing with the left, right? I'm not just going to leave it there as I'm vacuuming. So what I do is, and I should post this, Haas, because again, this gives a little bit more perspective as my life is concerned, or how I live my life with the affected side. But I get a towel, like a microfiber towel, and I place it in the left. And I don't know if you guys can speak to this, but when you hold onto something, your grip is so strong. So I'll hold the grip of the towel in my left and I'll use the right to vacuum, right? So if I see something on the floor like that I need to wipe, like a stain, and the vacuum's not going to pick it up, what I do is I'll use the left, grab the tag or the rag from my left side, then put the vacuum down, use my right side and clean the stain. Then get the rag, put it back in the left, hold it, and continue vacuuming. But I will say that even though I give you a hard time and I jokingly say don't ask, but I use it a lot.
That's good.
And even when I'm doing groceries, I need to also post my grocery shopping. I will use the left to hold both bags. Even though it's weak, my fingers are super weak, but that grip, I don't know if you guys can speak to this, but when you hold onto something on the affected side, it doesn't let go unless you tell it to gradually let go. Like I'll just be like, okay, and then I'll release, right? But I don't know if everybody's grip strong, but mine is for sure. Not that I'm a bodybuilder too, because I work out, but I will say that my grips is very, very strong. So with the grocery shopping, I'll use the left to hold the groceries, or I'll use the left to open the car door when I drive, because I drive with the right side. So again, the right side I drive with. The left hand just chills when I'm driving, right? Because it doesn't need to do much. The right kind of just does all the work. But I do use the left a lot. So groceries, dishes. Oh, biggest pet peeve of using the left is
Like this. Get the exercise, right? When you do the left hand.
for what?
For when you're
Wiping.
doing dishes, you get the
You know
exercise.
what I do, honestly, Haas, you'll probably be disappointed, but I do it with the right hand. I wash dishes all with the right. I'll have to show you but the only time I use the left is to hold the utensils. That's why I don't like doing the utensils, because it makes me have to use energy that, again, we don't want to do because we get complacent sometimes, right? We don't want to use our energy to use it. But what I'll do is I'll grab a utensil and I'll use the right to wash and then I'll drop it in the sink. So the only time I use the left for the dishes is the silverware. But everything else I do with one hand, literally. I really don't use, because my grip isn't really that strong. It's easier to just use the right hand to wash dishes, but I will use the left hand to hold the utensils. And even at that, holding a utensil, I get frustrated because it falls out of my hand all the time. I'm like, ugh. And sometimes I
Because
give
the
up.
brain is not telling it to do it
Right.
left, right?
Yep. You know
So
why?
that's
Because we trained our mind so well to just make it easy. Use the right.
yeah.
Use the right, right? Why do you want to use the left? It takes energy. Do we have energy sometimes? No, we don't. And that's kind of where I'm at with that too. I'm like, okay. Oh, I also deep clean my stove with one hand too. And I don't even use the left. Like in my videos, I'll post soon because I have all these videos, just haven't posted. But I use the right hand to take out the stove toppers. I use the right, everything with the right and the left just chills. So you're right. I think it's a matter of just.
You have if you because I'm left-handed, so I had my stroke left brain right side. So I used a lot of this hand to get it back.
No,
But still
yes.
sometimes when I'm holding a plate on this hand, it's flimsy still,
Yeah.
right after 10 years. So that's why I asked, because to use our affected side, it's good sometimes because this would talk to this,
Yep.
right? So
You know what, I had asked, I don't know who I'd asked about their thoughts about, I think it was Erica, about the side. Okay, my theory on the people, on the stroke survivors that have right side affected, I feel like you guys heal quicker, not quicker like everything, but what I mean is you engage more of the right, because if you're right side dominant and you're affected on the right, you're going to train that brain because you need it. That
yeah.
is your second nature, is that hand. So so every time I see like Zabdi, or I see people that are right side affected, I'm like, man, their recovery is going to go quick because they need the right, and they're going to start making that connection because that's your side, right? To start using it more, as opposed to me,
Yeah.
who already has the advantage of using the right. I really don't need the left, but I do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I'm actually left-handed. I'm actually left-handed. Sorry.
Oh,
I'm actually
okay. But
left-handed.
you're affected on the right.
So I tried to work on the right hand because I want to use the right hand to hold the bottle if I don't want to hold it here. So I just had to work at it. But still,
How's your fingers?
it's okay.
Oh,
But I have trigger finger. I have a trigger finger.
What does that mean?
So if it goes down, it gets stuck sometimes. So I have to go like that.
Okay. Do you
Right?
have sensation? Like, can you feel?
No, I can feel everything. Yeah, I can feel everything. But I try to use this as much as I can.
Yeah.
Because I want it to work. Like today, actually, I went to the gym for the first time after a long time. So I took the weight, and actually, it was good. It helped me. Right.
How did you feel going to the gym? Did you feel insecure or?
No, actually, I did feel insecure because when I went in, I just went to do warm-ups.
Okay.
So we did treadmill for like 7 minutes, elliptical 7 minutes. For my back, I did like 7 minutes. So I did 2, 3, 4 machines, 7 minutes, just to warm up. So I'll go one more day just to warm up again, and then I'm gonna slowly, gradually, work for my
You,
arm and
hey,
my
you
leg. Yeah,
did the first step. You showed up. Now it's just a matter of just strengthening on
yeah,
your right side. That's what happened to me. I started walking the trails. I started walking at my park 4 miles
sorry, Allah.
every single day, just walking.
Yeah,
And then I moved to the gym. And, of course, I have like another story for the gym, my gym days and whatnot, but I love the gym. I love strength training. And people will look at me at the gym, right? People look at the unknown. People see me with my arm sticking out this way because my arm does
yeah.
whatever it wants sometimes, literally does whatever because I can't feel. So I have
Best thing is the
proprioception.
pool. Best thing is
Sorry?
the pool. Pool.
Yes, I heard the pools are
Pool.
really good, a good
Yeah,
outlet. Yep, agree.
yeah. You're in America or Canada?
No, 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 I'm in America. I'm
Oh,
in
you're in
US.
America. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I would have sent you
I'm down in
a
Texas.
bookmark with all the pools in Canada. I think I sent you that.
Oh, okay. No, I'm sure I don't like the pool because of the
Yeah.
sensation. I can't
Uh-huh.
feel, so I'm very sensitive to cold. Even
Right.
if you touch me. Oh, do you guys like being touched on your affected side? That's a question I have for everybody.
There's two more people. I'll stop talking.
Okay.
So for me, my affected side is very sensitive. I do
Me too.
feel, but because it's hypersensitive,
Same.
I don't like it so much. So yeah,
When they're like, mom, mom, and they tap my left, I'm like,
I don't
baby,
like that. Yeah.
really? And I tell my kids, so I'm like, baby, I don't like to be touched. Please touch. You could touch me on the right all you want. You can even give me a massage. I don't care. But just don't touch the left. Even my family knows. All my family knows. My mom, my dad, my grandma, everybody knows not to touch the left. I hate to feel that way. I feel bad, but it just does something to me. I just don't like to be touched. I just rather not. So yeah.
Another
When I was
question. I hope
Oh,
I'm not backing up the questions, but since
yeah.
we're on the topic of the left side and being right side dominant, do you feel like I mean, for me, I'm 3.5 years into my recovery time and I really don't ever use my left. So even if I clean, I'm cleaning with just the right. I I feel like I don't need to use the left as much as I want it back. Of course, I want to be able to hug and wash my hair and do all the things that I used to do with my left.
Yeah.
I can go throughout my entire day without using it. And then I remember, oh, I haven't done anything for the arm. So then I start to lift the arm. So my question was
Yeah.
around when did your fingers start to come back?
Well, it's very hard to gauge because I've had 4 head surgeries. So every time that the brain was exposed, I'd have a different outcome. So in the beginning, my fingers were like this, right? Very beginning. I even have a video about that, but very caged in. Then the second surgery, they loosened a little bit. Then the third surgery, it was I want to say maybe the fingers were limber. They were limber, but not fully open. And then by the fourth surgery, it's a thumb that never came back. So like I could go one all the way, but this thumb always wants to come in. And the thumb is the gatekeeper of our hand, right? That's how we grab things is with our thumb. So for me, like it always wants to come cave in. So when I go see my doctor, she'll inject specifically the thumb to kind of relax that muscle. But honestly, a lot of it stems and will help with the opening of my thumb by doing therapy, OT therapy at home. And I always keep it simple. I've given some advice to some of my friends, like just get a bowl, put objects in the bowl, sit down, commit to putting a timer. It's really about discipline. Put things in a bowl, pick it up, release, pick up, release, pick up, release. And so going back to your question, it's hard to say because it went like in waves, but they always say the hand's the last to come back.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't discourage you from the arm. You need to be doing arm circles, right? I can move a little bit, like there's times where I'll do the Smith machine at the gym and my arm cannot go all the way back like my right. See how the right's gonna go back? The left doesn't. But I have to stretch that muscle, but I have to engage it. Same for you that you're still early on in your recovery as well. Use the left, especially even if you're so comfortable in saying, I'm okay with never using the left. No, don't think that way just yet. Use it, use it, use it, use it. Because listen, you're gonna get more mobile. You're gonna start moving. You're gonna start grocery shopping. Your brains, you can't lose sight of the grocery shopping, of how to hold a bag. You need to start strengthening the fingers and the arms. So you're gonna need this strength for when you do gain because right now your goal is what? the walking. The
I
goal is the running.
walking, but even with the arm, it's really just getting at least the elbow so that I can balance.
Even, yeah, so don't get too complacent with the idea of not using it at all. Or I'm just comfortable with the right. No, especially because you want to do more things and take trips and go skydiving and do things. You want to not be in pain también with the arm. You want to be able to have some mobility in that arm where you're like, oh, I can't, oh, to even stretch it just hurts. Don't put yourself in that situation. You know what I'm saying? Because then you shortchange yourself. I would suggest just implementing everything as you can and where you feel comfortable. Again, same for me. There's times where I'm like, my husband will kind of stretch me out, but I like the uncomfortable. I'm like, no, stretch it out. Even if it means I'm uncomfortable for a little bit, stretch it out. That's where I kind of know where I need to work more on in my recovery. This is lifelong. This is forever. And we talk about recovery. People have asked me, how recovered are you? I'm like, well, I don't know. What's your definition of recovery? I don't know. I can't answer that. I can't say I'm 100%, but that's me, right? It all goes back to defining a recovery and what's your percentage and how you gauge the percentage of recovery you're at in your life, right? So that's like another discussion as well.
I got a quick funny one. When I was in the hospital, because I'm left side affected, and I kept neglecting the left side. So my OT in the hospital, she kept putting post-it notes all over my room saying to the left, to the left. She kept coming with the Beyonce song, to the left, to the left. So
to
I
encourage
still
you
sing it.
and motivate you.
Yeah, I still sing it to this day every once in a while. It reminds me of the hospital. I'm like, to the left, to the left.
Hey, then put that song on if it has to remind you.
Yeah,
Hey, that's
exactly.
a good motivational song. Do it.
Just thought maybe it might help everybody else.
You what? Hey, yep. Anything to get your left engaged. You know, and defining recovery too. What does that look for you? Some people will say, "Oh, I'm 100% because I can bathe myself." Great, that's awesome because I love that everybody has their own definition and could say what their percentage of recovery is for them, and I respect that 100%. You know, but there's also the other survivors that will say like, when will this ever get better? I don't know. Everybody's recovery is different. I don't like to compare. I just like to share what I have, you know, and keep it from there, you know.
Yeah.
Awesome conversation, guys.
Yeah.
What we'll do is I'm gonna let Erin come back in because I think she's remembered her question, and then I'll turn off the recording. And if anyone wants to ask a question off the recording, then they're welcome to do that. And don't forget, you can put in the chat if you're not comfortable on camera. So Erin, you can go ahead.
Hey, thank you. I did remember it. I feel like I have to write things down nowadays because I just don't, they go out of my head. And I don't know if it's because of actual like brain damage or if honestly, it's just, I feel like I'm constantly playing like, what would this be like if I didn't like constant in my head? So it distracts me. But the question I wanted to ask was, you mentioned driving. And it's something that I'm like, taking the test or whatever to do at the beginning of April. And so I'm curious, like, how has that gone for you? What are you using? And yeah, how do you gain your confidence back? It's just been a while since I've driven.
I laugh because I didn't take no driving test. I didn't ask. I was one of those girls that don't ask. If they're not asking me, they're not saying it. I'm not mentioning it. So no doctor ever told me I couldn't drive, ever. They were just like, oh, well, what are your goals, Miss Gamez? I'm like, to run. You know what my goal was? Sorry, not to run, to do a burpee. A burpee. Because pre-stroke, I loved boot camp and I hated burpees. And now that I know I can't do it, I was even more fueled to want to do that. So that was one of the things. But nevertheless, driving, they're like, oh, do you want to learn how to drive? Or no, did they ask, do you want to drive? Or let's get you to learning how to drive, or we could take a test. But I never really answered their question. Like they would be with their questionnaires, but I never really mentioned driving unless they did. They're like, oh, do you ever want to get to a point where you drive? I'm like, yeah, but that's it. So again, it's different in Texas, right? Because that's where I'm from, but they never asked. I didn't say anything. They didn't say anything. So I started slowly but surely with the right side. I just reversed and I started taking back streets at first. And it, mind you, with the dumb helmet. That's why I'd rather stay at home because I was not going to be driving around with the helmet. But I started to drive back streets And I also have another video. God, I gotta share all these videos, but I just need someone to be like, post it for me. But anyways, I started taking back streets, and Annalise needed speech therapy one time. She was stuttering, and I felt, Erin, that she was speaking too quickly because mom was too compulsive. Hurry, what do you need? Yes, tell me what. Can I? And so again, here comes mom guilt, right? I think I've kind of try to make my daughter talk too quickly to get a sentence in like 10 seconds because mom is a little impatient and just wants a question to be spit out at 4 years old. So I remember her stuttering, and I felt so guilty. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take her to speech therapy. I'm not going to be a parent in denial. I definitely feel like we need to and I need to understand and learn to slow things down. Even in talking, I love to talk. I love, but again, there's still that a little bit of that impulsiveness that we all struggle with in our recovery or whatnot, our own anxiousness and whatnot. But going back to Anna, going to speech, I had to take the highway. I had been doing back road driving for some time. And I was like, oh my God, I know I could get there so much quicker if I just take one highway. Okay, Julie, think about this. I'm overstimulated. It's a lot, right? I can use the right, but I get overstimulated with 2 cars on the side of me. And I'm like, I'd rather just stay on the right because I favor the right because the right's the dominant. And so I remember taking back streets to speech for a while. She was going to be going for some time. And no, I'm not. Sorry, my daughter has a sign in the back of the computer asking if I'm done. No, I'm not. But nevertheless, so going back to that, at this point, I'm already like 2 months into going speech the back roads, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. If this is me, neuroplasticity, I'm mentally thinking, I'll get on the freeway, I'll go up 3 miles, exit, take the access road, and get there quicker. And that's what I did. I went the back streets. I got on the access road. I got on the freeway, stayed on the right side. I knew I wasn't going to go doing the most. I was going to stick to my lane, not focus on anybody. And Anna's in the back in her car seat. And my husband's like, are you sure? I'm like, I know, I got this. I've been planning this for a while. I've been rewiring how I'm going to do it, what I'm going to do, and how I'm going to stay focused. And I did it. I got on there, stayed on my lane, exited. And I remember posting about it and feeling so accomplished. So guess what? I did it the next day. And then I did the next day. And consistency is key. I talk about that so much. If you just get comfortable, just do it once. Prove to yourself that you could do it. In moderation. I'm not saying go and kill yourself. No. In moderation, go and try it. And with me, that's exactly what I did. I went and I would exit, and it became second nature to me that I started to expand or broaden the horizon a little bit, get a little bit brave, what you call it. And I did. And now I can get on the highway, and I can listen to a little bit of music. Sometimes it just depends. My love will just be chilling while I'm driving. And I also knew, Erin, that my oldest doesn't drive. Now she does, but at the time she didn't. So I would have to drive her to college, and that required that. So that took practice too. And I knew at some point I just had to face my fear, do it every single day. And it started with Anna, then gradually increased to my other daughters that were in high school, would take them to school and back, school and back. So every day became a routine. And I will say that routine helps. So if you can create, like if you get up every morning and you want to learn how to drive, then you're going to commit your day to the morning time. You're going to drive to the parking lot and you're going to drive 45 minutes, and then you're done for the day and you're going to go home, and then you're going to repeat that again. Small gains add up. So if you can just give yourself that, whichever you can do it, and then go from there. And then you'll start to challenge yourself a little bit more from there. So I will say it gets better. And now, I mean, I'm not a subject, I'm very defensive. So I'm a slow driver. I don't care. And also I don't get, you honk at me, I don't care. Just keep it moving. I'll kind of just be like, okay, whatever it is, keep it moving. I'm going to do me. And I get there. And, but I do have limitations. I won't go too far, like super far now. And if we go out of town, my husband will drive. I won't overdo it. But for the most
part, you don't use any like
nope,
accommodations or anything.
Just the right. Nope. And I just have a truck. I have an SUV and I have a car. Oh, so when it came to getting a car, I'd always wanted a Lexus. I don't know why. I have Toyota. I love Toyota family. I always wanted a Lexus. That was like my dream car. My husband buys me a Lexus and I'm like, I don't think I want the car. I prefer the highness of the truck. And so my mom gets so upset. She's like, well, wait, so why don't you just give your husband the truck and you get your Lexus? I'm like, Mom, it's too low for me. I don't feel comfortable in a car. And so then I started to say, you know what, Julie, you got to face your fear. And I started driving in a car too and the truck. But if you had asked me preference, I prefer the truck because I like the height of it as opposed to a low car. But so it's funny, like now the car is literally my husband's and the truck is mine. But now I'm like, okay, maybe I want a Lexus SUV. Maybe we could get rid of the Toyota and we'll do a Lexus. But no, nevertheless, I don't have any accommodations. I just use the right hand. The left just chills as I'm driving. It just chills. You know why I don't use the left? Because I can't feel. And it does no good to me to what? Put it on something this is going to control. It makes no sense to me. So
How do you do, just out of curiosity, because I can use my left like clumsily. So I've been very
like what?
Like I can move it.
Okay.
And I feel it. But I can't so the thing that I get frustrated with is like, you know how you're holding the wheel and you go to the blinker? I can't do that on the left.
Oh, I use the right for that. So like I'm driving and sometimes I won't make it on time to do the blinker and I'll just have to not use the blinker. But I gauge it like to make sure I'm not completely cutting someone off. But if I don't have enough time to align the wheel to where I can use the right to use the blinker, whichever way, then, hey, you become an expert. Like you'll understand when you need to use it, but I won't use the left for my blinker and I won't use the left to hold the wheel because I can't feel. So it's not beneficial to me to hold on to dead weight because that's what it feels like for me. It feels like cement. I just would rather not. I'd rather use the right hand where I can feel and have control of the wheel and not put myself in that situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm curious, like I'm taking the test, as I said, and I'm so resistant to any adaptive equipment because I'm afraid that if I don't use the left side, I'll lose it. But I'm also impatient and I want to drive.
Erin, I got something. I took the driving rehabilitation course in New York, and I have the steering wheel spinner knob thing.
I know that thing. I think I'm gonna have to use that for a little while.
Try it. I've never tried it. Maybe if anybody has, they could chime in on that. I've never tried that.
I mean, I got one because the driving school recommended it, and then even my dad used it in my car, and he bought it for his car. He has no stroke issues. He just liked it.
People like them, yeah.
So when you're holding the knob and before you go to turn, you gotta reach over the steering wheel to hit the signal. You have to go over the wheel to hit the signal and then put your hand back on the knob and then do what you gotta do, if that helps.
And Aaron, maybe you try it with or without, right? But try it. That's the only way.
I might have a video. I can send it to you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to just, I guess this is more of a share, but it was just if it helps anyone or makes anyone. Now I'm not going to be doing it because of my Botox timing, but there is this like new drug for people that have spasticity that they're trying out at Johns Hopkins. So my main thing is just to say that I feel like things are moving fast and I'm hopeful that there will be things. It's like an injectable similar to Botox in that it's like FDA approved. It's just they don't use it for this. So I'm just saying this, it's like, let's all keep each other in the loop because I think things are moving, especially with spasticity.
Yeah, medicine is always evolving and yeah, agree. Totally agree. I know they try to get me on baclofen, which is like a nerve, but I don't use that. They're saying that's what causes a seizure, but again, that's just me. So they just took me off of that and now I just get Botox every 90 days. But I get the Botox.
Does it really help you, the Botox?
Yes. Yes, but again, you got to incorporate that with some kind of OT therapy, because at that point, if they're loose, that's when you got to start making that connection and start really using your muscles and using that more. And I feel that the more you use it, it kind of will come a little easier. Like for me, I already know at the groceries, carrying the bags, I already know I'm going to use the left because it's already kind of second nature to me to just use that. Or at the offices that I clean with my parents, I already know to have that rag in that left hand, and then it's like so tight. I already know, because again, it's funny, it's incredible how the brain just knows. It really does. It's just repetition is key. It really is. Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in and actually turn off the recording because this is amazing. Like there has been a few points I'm like, oh, maybe I'll jump in, but like the conversation is going and you guys are asking such great questions. I just want to let it happen because that's what this group is here for. But I
Yeah.
will stop the recording. So,